Back in 2023 and 2024, when the current FBI director was working as a podcaster obsessed with cleaning out the deep state, slashing government spending, he had one specific idea about how to do that.
Chris Wray doesn't need a government-funded G5 jet to go to vacation. Maybe we ground that plane. $15,000 every time it takes off. Just a thought.
Go take their money. Chris Wray doesn't need a private jet.
We're not the guys running around on private jets. And somebody maybe in Congress should ask for how many flights on a private jet Director Comey took, or my predecessor Director Wray took, and how many personal trips they took.
Don't knock it until you try it. That's what I say about private jets. The use of government jets for personal travel by former FBI director was sort of an obsession of Patel's for years. In 2023, Patel called former director Chris Wray a, quote, government gangster for his jet usage, which is why it was surprising to see Patel repost this photo on Sunday of him in his FBI-branded hoodie out on a date with his country singer girlfriend, Alexis Wilkins. Now, Wilkins was performing at a Penn State sporting event on Saturday. And if you're wondering how Kash Patel got there to support her, well, public flight logs show he took a taxpayer-funded government jet. Later that night, that same jet flew from Pennsylvania to Nashville, where Patel's girlfriend lives. Now, I should know, FBI directors are required by law to use government planes for security purposes. It's a point Patel raised in May when Senate Democrats last inquired about his jet usage.
Oh, this is a great point. Do you know why I have to use a private jet? Because Congress made it mandatory.
Okay. In April 5th, well, we didn't make it mandatory that you go to UFC games with Mel Gibson.
Are you telling me I can't go home?
You got to use some judgment here.
I love the logic there. I had to go to the event. So what, I'm supposed to stay there? Well, you don't have to go to every event. Patel's lack of judgment when using a taxpayer-funded plane for private excursions during a government shutdown on the eve of SNAP benefits running out is really just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we have seen members of the Trump administration taking advantage of government perks, like DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, who spent more than $172 million on private jets. Now The Atlantic is reporting that officials like Stephen Miller, Noem, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and others are living in homes meant for generals on military bases. They say it's for security reasons, though they already have personal security details. And in the past, those people with those jobs didn't occupy these homes. They all seem to be taking Trump's cues. They can help themselves to the public till. Charles Blow is a journalist and author of the Blow the Stack Substack. Michelle Goldberg is an opinion columnist in the New York Times, and they join me now. Charles, I'm struck that in the first term, Tom Price, who's their Secretary of HHS, was actually brought down for flying around on a private jet, that there's this sort of level of scandal that used to exist that feels like it no longer does. Why do you think that is? Why have we found ourselves in this kind of golden age of corruption here?
Well, I mean, mostly it's because Donald Trump has set the bar so high or low, depending on how you want to describe it, that nothing really registers anymore. But it also underscores that what these people were complaining about was not something that they opposed on principle, but rather something that they were jealous of. They were never really on principle against indoctrination. They just wanted to do it themselves and more. They were never really against weaponizing the Justice Department. They just wanted to do it themselves and more. They were never against grift. They just wanted to do it themselves and more. And the public, sadly, has gotten used to this kind of behavior from this administration. And because there's so much coming at you in every possible way, including whether or not we will even have a fair election in 2026 and whether or not there will be military at those polling stations in 2026, that you have to put things in some sort of order of outrage. And this begins to look like a lesser thing on that list of things to be outraged about.
What do you think, Michelle?
Well, I mean, the fish rots from the head, right? So I think it was pretty obvious that when Kash Patel was saying that Christopher Wray shouldn't be taking all these trips, the problem was that Christopher Wray shouldn't be taking all these trips, right? Like he should be.
Yes.
And so I just think, yes, I mean, if you are in this administration, kind of almost by definition, you think a certain amount of graft and corruption and expropriation is good and admirable. And if you're not doing it, you're something of a sucker. And so, and I think this is something that you see again and again with Republicans. I mean, it's almost a cliche at this point to say every accusation is a confession. But in some ways, every accusation is a statement about, they sort of project all of these faults onto their enemies and then use it to justify their far worse misdeeds.
Yeah, and one thing I've been thinking about with the ballroom particularly, and then the Dubai gifted Air Force One, which again is like insane that happened, is, if you're in public life and you're in public service, you're in public spaces and public buildings. And they're just not, even the nice ones tend to not be glitzy in the way that, the luxury appointments of super rich people are. That's definitely true of the West Wing of the White House, which is not, you walk in there, it's kind of small and it's cramped, and it doesn't feel like something palatial and regal. And this culture of sort of monarchism and perks means that, Charles, they're just not satisfied with that. They want, there really is this culture up there at the top of wanting to live the kind of Instagram billionaire life.
Right. Both the plane and the East Wing renovation or destruction, demolition, both of those things are supposed to be finished after Trump should be out of office. They could speed it up and get it done earlier, but that also worries me, because why are you doing it if you can't use it? The second thing, however, is the idea that at the end of empire, and I am very much a pessimist about where we are in this country, and I believe that most people are not registering how far gone we are. At the end of empire, looting is part of it. The amassing of wealth, the collecting of wealth, that becomes part of how empires, part of the demise of empire. And so I'm worried about that. If I look at the grift that's happening and the massive amounts of money that are being collected by very few people, that does not portend well for the rest of us.
Yeah, we should say Nome is a particular star here. They kicked out the former Coast Guard leader with 3 hours notice. She then took over is living rent-free in the Coast Guard commandant's house. She spent more than $68,000 in taxpayer money on rugs, sauna, chandeliers for the state governor's mansion back when she was a governor. There was also $150,000 in personal expenses that that was picked up by the state. And I think in the past, something like that you would start to see Republican senators saying things I'm concerned with that would lead to maybe a scandal. But the ability to maintain perfect party discipline in the legislative really does end up essentially being carte blanche for anyone.
Right. And they fired all of the, they fired the ombudsmen, they fired the inspectors general. And they know that kind of Congress is completely supine. And then the more frightening part is that they don't seem to care how this looks to the voters.
That's the thing. There's a shutdown. People are going to go without food stamps.
Right. And so you would think that there would be at least the performance of some kind of mild austerity, but they don't feel any need to do that. And I actually think that is not unrelated to them all retreating to these bunkers, right? I mean, part of that might be about exploitation, but part about is just literally walling yourself off from any contact with the people that you're supposed to be accountable to.
Yeah, that sort of not caring about the optics. I was thinking about, that's why the Kash Patel thing so struck me, because it's again, people's personal lives are complicated and you want to see the person that you're in a relationship with, which I get, and it's mandated to, but that's a wild thing to do in the middle of a government shutdown when Snap's about to run out and you've spent years blowing up the FBI director for his use of private jets. Charles Blow, Rochelle Goldberg, thank you both.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.